The show is starting.
I can remember the night in your arms, underneath the pagan moon, dreaming away on the pillow of palm, underneath the pagan moon. La 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 la, la 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 la. Every kiss was a sweet pagan prayer to your eyes and your lips and your hair. Only the thought came a little too soon as we watched the pagan moon.
Aloha!
La 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 la, la 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 la.
Oh, nuts! La 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 la.
Burn 'em up, brother.
The finest in underground television.
L'Allegro by John Milton. Hence, loathed melancholy of Cerberus and blackest midnight born in Stygian cave forlorn, mongst horrid shapes and shrieks and sights unholy, find out some uncouth cell where brooding darkness spreads his jealous wings and the night raven sings. There, amid ebon shades and low-browed rocks as ragged as thy locks, in dark Cimmerian desert ever dwell. But come, thou goddess, fair and free, in heaven ye clept Euphrosyne, and by men heart-easing mirth that lovely Venus at her birth with two sister graces more to ivy-crowned Bacchus bore. Or whether, as some sager sing, the frolic wind that breathes the spring, Zephyr with Aurora playing, as he met her once, a Maying, there on beds of violets blue and fresh-blown roses washed in dew, filled her with thee, a daughter fair, so buxom, blithe, and debonair. Haste thee, nymph, and bring with thee jest and youthful jollity, cranks and quips and wanton wiles, nods and becks and wreathed smiles, such as hang on Hebe's cheek, and loves to live in dimples sleek, sport that wrinkled care derides, and laughter holding both his sides. Come and trip it as ye go on the light fantastic toe, and in thy right hand lead with thee the mountain nymph, sweet Liberty. Or if I give thee honor due, Mirth, admit me of thy crew, to live with her and live with thee in unreproofed pleasures free. to hear the lark begin his flight, and singing startle the dull night from his watchtower in the skies, ere the dappled dawn doth rise, there to come in spite of sorrow, and at my window bid good morrow, through the sweet briar or the vine or the twisted eglantine, while the cock with merry din scatters the rear of darkness thin, and to the stack or the barn door proudly struts his dames before. Oft listening how the hounds and horn clearly rouse the slumbering morn from the side of some hoar hill, through the high wood echoing shrill. Sometime walking, not unseen, by hedgerow elms on hillocks green, straight against the eastern gate, where the great sun begins his state, robed in flames and amber light, the clouds in thousand liveries dight, while the ploughman close at hand whistles o'er the furrowed land, and the milkmaid singeth blithe, and the mower whets his scythe, and every shepherd tells his tale under the hawthorn in the dale. Straight mine eyes have caught new pleasures, whilst the landscape round it measures russet lawns and fallows grey, where the nibbling flocks do stray, mountains on whose barren crest the labouring clouds too often rest, meadows trim with daisies pied, shallow brooks and rivers wide, towers and battlements it sees bosomed high in tufted trees, where perhaps some beauty lies, the cynosure of neighboring eyes. Hard by, a cottage chimney smokes from betwixt two aged oaks, where Corydon and Thyrsis met, are at their savoury dinner, set with herbs and other country messes, which the neat-handed Phyllis dresses, and then, in haste, her bower she leaves with Thestilis to bind the sheaves. Or, if the earlier season lead to the tanned haycock in the mead, sometime in secure delight the upland hamlets will invite, when the merry bells ring round and the jocund rebecks sound, to many a youth and many a maid dancing in the checkered shade, whilst young and old come forth to play on a sunshine holy day, till the livelong daylight fail, then to the spicy nut-brown ale, with stories told of many a feat, how fairy Mab the junkets eat. She was pinched and pulled, she said, while he by friar's lantern led, tells how the drudging goblin sweat to earn his cream bowl duly set, when in one night, ere glimpse of morn, his shadowy flail hath threshed the corn, that 10-day labourers could not end. Then lies him down the lubber fiend, and stretched out by the chimney's length, basks at the fire his hairy strength. And crop full, out of doors he flings, ere the first cock his matin rings. Thus done the tales, to bed they creep, by whispering winds soon lulled asleep. Towered cities please us then, and the busy hum of men, where throngs of knights and barons bold in weeds of peace high triumphs hold, with store of ladies, whose bright eyes reign influence and judge the prize of wit or arms, while both contend to win her grace, whom all commend. There let Hymen oft appear, in saffron robe with taper clear, and pomp and feast and revelry, with masque and antique pageantry. Such sights as youthful poets dream on summer eves by haunted stream. Then to the well-trod stage anon, if Johnson's learned sock be on, or sweetest Shakespeare, fancy's child, warble his native wood notes wild. And ever against eating cares, lap me in soft Lydian airs, married to immortal verse through which the meeting soul must pierce in notes with many a winding bout of linked sweetness, long drawn out. With wanton heed and giddy cunning, the melting voice through mazes running, untwisting all the chains that tie the hidden soul of harmony, that Orpheus' self might heave his head from golden slumber on a bed of heaped Elysian flowers, and hear such notes as, falling on the ear of Pluto, would have quite set free his half-regained Eurydice. These delights, if thou canst give, mirth with thee I mean to live.
Here before you is an opportunity to plumb the depths of the mysteries that confound and intrigue us. A chance to ask the big questions. Dr. Hal is not interested in questions of trivial matters or of facts that are easily gathered elsewhere. Dr. Hal seeks the questions that transcend fact. He stands before you ready to take questions that used to be brought to wise and aged sages on distant mountaintops. These questions can now be asked from the comfort of your living room. No Sherpas required. Simply direct your favorite web browser to co-fi.com/AskDrHal. You will be taken to a website where all you need do is submit your question in the provided message block and the value that you wish to place upon it, and Dr. Hal will answer your question in a way that only Dr. Hal can. Next, you will be asked for your email address. Don't worry, we never sell, share, or solicit. PayPal takes care of the rest and moves your valuable love offering from your hand to Dr. Hal. Simply enter your information and you're done. Wisdom will flow directly from Hal's lips to your ears. Links for this can also be found on the Ask Dr. Hal website at gonzotronics.net/ADH for Ask Dr. Hal. Do not let this opportunity to consult a modern-day oracle, a seer for seers, a man steeped in the arts, sciences, and esoteric studies pass you by. Now, through the very internet itself, comes to you the one and only Dr. Hal Robins, now making house calls. Good evening, Dr. Hal.
Greetings and salutations.
We're back. It's been
Yes.
a month already. How did that
It's
happen?
the penultimate show. With the way time gallops, we have only one more this year.
That's true. That's true. We have the December show coming up, December
Yes.
11th, by the way.
Right.
Bears repeating. Well, would you like to get started?
I think we may as well. I hope we have some good questions in the hopper, but you would know about that.
I have one that's going to set the mood for the whole evening.
Oh, all right.
It is a $6 question, and it comes from CNC, and the question is, it's actually a two-part question, I should mention. How did the moon landing affect Nazi orphans? And what is Satan's favorite tactics for analingus?
Well, that is an interesting question. The two halves of it do not seem to be particularly well related. But let's take them as they come. First of all, how did the moon landing affect Nazi orphans? Who can say, because they're not all equally involved in the antecedents of the lunar landing in July 1969, but some were. And those were the offspring of SS officers and slave labor who worked at Peenemünde, where the V2 rocket was being assembled and fired. As Tom Leraire said about Werner von Braun, some have harsh words for this man of renown, but others with latitude receive him with gratitude, like the widows and cripples in old London town who owe their large pensions to Werner von Braun. I suspect that such survivors of the V2 rocket program, which was an amazing jump forward in rocketry and created the first guided missile, essentially, were relieved that this rocketry now went toward a peaceful international purpose and maybe took some of the onus off them for being connected with a military weapon so awful and swift that it could not be prepared for. Yes, evil in that case was shown to be the possible foundation for good. And in Christian theology, God churns evil and turns it into good, since God can only produce good, and his chief opponent, though not his equal, unless one is a Manichaean, Satan, who is actually the equivalent of the archangel Michael, is, he tries to turn good into evil, and so it goes. And what about Satan? What about his attitude toward Analingus? Did you say his performing analingus or receiving? Since in the witchcraft rituals, it was often said that the witches, when they met at the Sabbat, after they summoned their chief, Satan, were asked to perform this same office. It was called the osculus infandum, or the obscene kiss, and many illustrations show the devil obligingly lifting his tail with one hand so that the kneeling witch can go for it. But what was his attitude toward it? His attitude, I suppose, is unchanging and was demanding submission and recognition, somewhat similar to the attitude which is always predictably present in everything produced or said by the most recent president of the United States, Donald John Trump. Thank you for your question. Is there anything I should add, Pastor Pressure?
No, I was, I got stuck on the word analingus, and I forgot about kissing the devil's backside. And well,
But that's what it's all about.
I suppose, yes. If one wants to go all the way, that's how one does it, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Well, it might be said that since the devil excretes good and retains evil, the devil's backside is the best possible place to give him a kiss. But I have no plans in that direction myself. I am not a Christian, and let it be understood, since it rarely is, that those who worship Satan are also Christians, since Satan is a Christian character and only can be approached in the framework of Christianity. So let us move on, since this is a Church of the Subgenius program, and there are many gods in the subgenius pantheon, one of whom we will encounter later in our show.
I have a $15 question from Reverend Xenofact.
Oh, very good.
And it is, let me open it up here, actually. It goes outside of those boundaries. There we go. Dr. Hal, as we all know, the Necronomicon is a fictional, yet people have insisted on believing in it. What is this drive people have to believe in such imaginary books? I'd like to cite the wonderful book, The Necronomicon Files by Harms and Gauncy, as inspiration.
That sounds like an interesting book. Well, the Necronomicon comes from the writings of H.P. Lovecraft, but Lovecraft himself had access to an extremely unusual and extensive library as a child, as an omnivorous reader. He did possess some occult books. I have some of the same ones myself, or I had more, but I got rid of a lot of them when I decided to get when I decided it wasn't a good idea. At any rate, if he had, for example, the Sacred Book of Abramelin the Mage and others. But the Necronomicon name may simply be something commonly practiced by occultists where secret knowledge is disguised with a different name. And one feels that there should be such a book to encapsulate the blackest dreams of human hearts. Furthermore, the Necronomicon can be approached as any other text. Many ancient books have been lost, but they are known through quotations from later writers, and thus we approach texts of ancient works we no longer have. And from the fragments remaining, we are able to put it together. And there are a number of lengthy sections from the Necronomicon appearing in the works of Lovecraft and his fellow travelers, ones that can even be quoted. To these, one should devote one's attention if one is interested in following that particular book. There's also a mysterious, unknown, supposedly astronomical text called the Voynich manuscript. Some have said that this incomprehensible volume, I've got one around here somewhere, is the basis of the famous Necronomicon of Abdul al-Hazred. Let's get a little closer. The name Abdul al-Hazred is redundant. One does not need to say al in al-Hazred or Abdul if you are doing this name. It's like repeating twice in Arabic, but people have funnier names. My own dear parents knew a woman named U.T. Summers. She actually shortened her name, which was University of Texas, that her enthusiastic parents gave her, but she disliked calling herself that, so it was UT. At any rate, whether or not Abdul al-Hazred is like saying Abdul al-Hazred or Abdul al-Hazred, this was the Arabic name of the main compiler, since the Necronomicon was supposedly based on earlier text and was a compendium of them used by sorcerers and magicians. The name Necronomicon, commonly thought to mean the names of the dead, is more like, if you parse it closely on the Greek basis, the operative section of the word is nomos, meaning name. No, I'm sorry, meaning custom. So the title of this work would be That Which is Binding Among the Dead. The worst aspect of sorcery and black magic is, of course, the completely forbidden raising of the dead through necromancy. Even a lot of sorcerers won't go there. One's soul is irretrievably lost. It's like trying to ask the universe to go backwards. Death is a necessary part of it. We can't be suspending it, even though that is an ancient dream of humans, good or evil. Did I get anywhere with that one?
That was good. No, you had me wrapped on that one.
I can quote the Necronomicon. I often do at certain times.
Why, please do.
No, there's no need to now, but...
oh, well, okay.
Well, I mean, sometime when you need to open a window, you might say, as a foulness ye shall know him, as a foulness ye shall know them. Speaking of the adherents of the nameless ones, the ones that have names, but I'm not going to name them here.
I jump at any opportunity to open the window.
Yes,
So.
often it is necessary when those who radiate foulness are around. What's next?
We have bees. We have bees coming up
Bees.
next. Yes.
Oh, the bee's knees. Oh,
The
that's
bees'
great.
knees. We tucked them in for the winter.
Do you have them sealed inside the hive? Can any go in or out? Because I know you had robber bees paying a visit.
Yeah, we actually to remedy that, you close off the entry to the hive, so you make a smaller entry. And
what do they do for water?
They come and go. They're not sealed in. The insulation that you'll see actually there's a gap in the front where the opening still goes in.
But they're on the lookout for robber bees. Well, let's see this new installation.
Absolutely. But before we do, I would like to remind the audience that this is the Ask Dr. Hal show, and you asking is part of what we do. So I'm going to give an opportunity for our queue to build up. You can enter your questions into Ko-fi. We are also on the honor system here. So if you just want to, you have a question that just occurred to you and you'd like to throw it into the text chat, St. Joyce will be happy to write that down and get it onto my desk for me. So either way, and you can owe us whatever your pledge amount is. We know you're good for it. So Dr. Hal, I have bees, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Central Delaware has gone beyond peak autumn, and we are seeing most of our leaves falling. Today we will start by installing a feeder board. This is simply a frame with a screen suspended in it that fits on top of the hive. This allows us to put solid food into the hive and suspend it for easy bee access. Before I continue, these have an access hole in the top that I've left sealed. I tested these with it open and managed to invite wild bees who were robbing the food. From here on in, we'll leave these sealed. Last month, we made over 8 pounds of hard candy, which will be fed to the bees over the winter, supplemented with commercial bee food. We showed the steps making this candy in a previous video. Yes, it's delicious and has had essential oil added to it to attract and protect the bees. We saved some for ourselves. Today, we are beginning supplemental feeding through the winter to make sure that the bees have all that they need for the colony to survive and thrive until spring. Bees are active year-round. On all but the coldest days of the year, we see activity at the hives with the bees foraging, making bathroom breaks, cleaning out hive debris, and generally going about business as usual. We are putting insulating wraps around our hives today to keep the heat inside the hive to make it less work to maintain and thus help the bees conserve their supplies. During the winter months, the bees expend their energies and food supplies, keeping the core temperatures of the hive around 80 to 90 Fahrenheit. Here, we see a thermometer measuring the temperature of the core of a beehive. At the core, it is around 84 Fahrenheit. Taking the temperature on an outer wall of the hive shows a much cooler 39 Fahrenheit. And our job here today is done.
Well, let's hope they enjoy their day off or time off during the winter.
They're pretty active during the winter. We see them coming and going all the time, just not, in the big groups that we see in the spring and summer. But
What do they find to get pollen from?
Dandelions are one of the things, and
Yeah.
Speedwell is another. It's a very early bloomer, and Hellebore. Hellebore is a big one for bees in the wintertime.
Well, that should make some interesting honey.
And witch hazel. Witch hazel is another thing that they get pollen and nectar
Sounding
from.
more intriguing all the time with the witch hazel and hellebore.
Well, we have it all growing in our yard.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
how convenient.
It's absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. In any event, I have a couple more questions here in the queue, and we have one from an old friend of the show, our good friend Reverend Gofflin, and it is,
Wonderful.
Dear Dr. Hal. Actually, let me open it up. It is a $12 question, and it is, Dear Dr. Hal, how do I keep the slack vampires off my back? I seem to be bad at identifying them in the moment, and I find my emergentile tendencies towards finding slack in my work are leaving me vulnerable to them.
Well, Dr. Gofflin, that's a profound question. The slack vampires are difficult to deter. As you may all be aware, vampires wish to take energy from you, sometimes to exchange energy, but usually it only goes one way, and that's from you toward them. And this certainly includes those who wish to fritter away your most valuable time on their least valuable concerns. I recently had someone object to the advertisements placed for this show by saying, I took a short scan of the poster and I couldn't understand anything. That means this person wanted me to stop what I was doing and explain everything that was on the poster. Even though everything that is on the poster speaks for itself. That is to say, that person would not do the simple job of reading the poster in order to gain understanding, but wished me instead to perform the complex job of explaining it, when in fact, where the poster is concerned, res ipsa loquitur. When I gently pointed this out in my response, there was a lot of bluster about, you have no idea who you're dealing with, and so forth. And this is one way to determine the slack vampire. They act most offended if in any way you object to their idea of what you should do with your time to satisfy them. Know this diagnostic fact. And then what one does is set them up with a false target where it appears that they are going to be occupying you, when in fact they are set on a path which will cause them to labor toward that goal, which ideally should infinitely recede as they approach it, like Achilles' tortoise in Zeno's paradox. But you can't stop some of these determined and demented beings, because that is all they live for. And the only way to have a barrier against them for sure is not to consult the internet or the digital world, a hard thing for some of us, particularly those of us who use it for our own purposes. I hope Reverend Gofflin is successful at deterring them.
They're out there.
We want her to come back and do more for our show as she has in the past.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Me too. I had heard a rumor that she's thinking of something for us. So.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Time will tell.
But I don't want to bind her to any commitment. So.
No, that would not be helpful for anyone.
You know, Dr. Howe, it's probably not a bad time to mention, we do take submissions from our audience. If you folks have stuff that you think we would like to show on the Dr. Howe show, please contact us. We would love to put it on.
I did mention to K-Rob the other day that we were looking for that, and he said he would see what he found, although a recent computer catastrophe erased many of his files.
Yeah, it happens. It's a horrible thing.
As updates and like that occur, reams of stuff are lost and discarded.
Yeah, it's a disaster when it happens. We're very backup heavy here at Gonzotronics. So,
but I think he has some. Anyway, let us proceed.
Indeed. Well, I have a video question for you. One of our regular contributors, Dr. Billy, sent us a $15 video question, and I have it here for you right now. Let me find it. There it is.
Hi, Dr. Hal. I was wondering, what was your first job as a kid and what did you learn from that experience?
Well, Dr. Billy, there's nothing I can be proud of as far as my early job getting. Where my family and I lived was once an empty field, but soon things started to be built around us. A junior high school across the street, neighbors in the farmhouse at the top of the hill, and then in between, small, quickly set up single-story homes. And on the other side of our fence, an IGA store and a drugstore called Hood's Drugstore. We joked that it was named that because of the punks and hoods who hung around the soda fountain in those oh so innocent days. But the drugstore also had a comic book rack, and there I spent many happy hours thumbing through comic books, which, if I had had the money to buy them, could have been sold in this time period for a fortune. Also, at that time, you could put down a nickel and get a 5-cent cherry phosphate or some soda fountain drink. All of the things which are viewed with horror by today's dietary fascists. Anyway, I was not allotted money to buy these things, which my parents disapproved of. And in order to get it, I offered myself to Mr. Hood as a cleanup boy in the store. And there I would push a broom around, clean and tidy up the store until I had enough money, not a great amount, and it went a lot farther in those days, to buy the necessary comic books or plastic toys, some of which I coveted but were deemed unnecessary by my own personal guardians. This was the first time I ever had any kind of employment, and I did it on my own, but I'm not sure it's anything to write home about. Still, you have managed with your question to uncover this previously hidden facet of my early career. For all I know, Hood's Drugstore is still there, but the house we lived in has been obliterated by the progress of time. Thanks for your question.
Time.
Yes, time hath endless rarities and shows of all varieties, which revealeth old things in heaven, maketh new discoveries in earth, and even earth itself a discovery. That great antiquity America lay buried in the earth for 1,000 years, and a large part of the earth is still in the urn unto us, as Sir Thomas Browne wrote in his immortal Hydriotaphia, or urn burial. How's the Q jar looking? I mean, the questions, the stuff.
It's like Jell-O. There's always room for Jell-O. We always have more room.
Always room for dessert.
We
Yes, they
always,
say
so
so.
audience, get your questions in to Dr. Hal. This is the Ask Dr. Hal show, and we need you to ask those questions. Keep it weird. Keep
They
it
don't have to
weird.
be tricky questions, you understand. They can be as bland as a soft boiled egg. It's up to us to turn them into something entertaining. So just get that question in there and we will deal with it.
Well, we do have something unusual for our audience tonight, and it's something that the show uncovered from, I believe it's 1954. I could be mistaken.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
it's quite a lovely thing. So I'm going to show that now, give an opportunity for our audience to put questions into the queue. But I hope everyone enjoys this. It's quite an unusual piece, and I don't know that enough people have seen this.
I suspect they have not. This is, if I do not mistake myself, the slithering serpent dance we authorized on our poster. Yes, let's take a look at that terpsichorean marvel
I,
now.
I don't want to infect anyone's opinion, so here it comes.
There, that was certainly something, wasn't it?
That was Christian and Jeannick Arnaud.
On the old Abbott and Costello television show, isn't that correct?
Yes, and about the only thing I've been able to find out about them is they kind of ran that circuit at that period of time. And then there's not too much said about them, but they were a married couple. So imagine whatever you will.
Well, we're happy to give them an opportunity to show once again.
Yeah, a beautiful, beautiful piece. It blows my mind. I watch it with rapt attention every single time I see it.
That was quite an outfit she had.
Breathtaking. What a costume. Amazing.
Yeah.
And her flexibility and gymnastics were just impeccable.
Mm-hmm.
The two of them together were very well rehearsed. But I have questions. Would you like Let's give you a question, Dr. Hal.
Pardon me.
This is from our old friend Mob Miati. And it is a $21 question. And
Excellent.
It is an interesting question. Do vultures eat dead vultures?
Mob Miati, I believe they do. The vultures flock to the side of the poisoned fox, the mud turtle crushed on the shoulder of the road. They prey over the leaf graves of the itinerant lost, with mercy enough to consume us all and give us wings. This includes their own type. Death is just something to provide nutrition for these creatures. In Vedantic culture, they were holy beings who transported the bodies away. And in India, until quite recently, there were places, what were they called? The Towers of Silence, where the bereaved left the bodies of the dead in a special enclosure for vultures to come and take them away. And this lasted until about a decade ago, when unfortunately the vulture population started to die off because of Monsanto putting a poison in the food that the cattle ate, that the vultures also ate, and so forth. So the Towers of Silence may still exist, but there are probably only a few vultures, if at all, come for the dead who are turning liquescent in their standard decay mode. Nonetheless, vultures have been seen disposing of their own dead. So I imagine the answer to your question is yes. Now, since you broke the $20 barrier, you're also entitled to a poem from me, but not a poem by me. In ancient maps, one often sees unusual sea monsters displayed as decorations or as inhabiting the oceans. These may be classified in a number of ways, and I have spoken about them in recent radio shows. Such marine monsters as the kraken, the scolopendra, and the physeter. There's also another marine monster which is reported by every culture on Earth, and this is the giant floating turtle, sometimes mistaken as an island by the unfortunates who disembark from a ship and attempt to have a picnic or something on the back, with disastrous results. One may remember that Sinbad the sailor, in his 7 voyages, had an unfortunate encounter with a giant marine monster in just this way. Early Christianity came and said that this was all part of God's wondrous plan to illustrate how Satan lures you and then dumps you, or in this case, drowns you. The name of this giant turtle is Fastitocolon. Look, there is Fastitocolon, an island safe to land upon, although 'tis rather bare. Come, leave the sea, and let us run, or dance, or lie down in the sun. See, gulls are sitting there. Beware, Gulls do not sink. There they may sit and strut and prink. Their purpose is to tip the wink, if anyone should dare upon that isle to settle, if only for a while, to get relief from sickness or the wet, or maybe boil a kettle. Ah, foolish folk who land on him, and little fires proceed to trim, and hope, perhaps, for tea. It may be that his shell is thick. He seems asleep, but he is quick, and floats now in the sea with guile. And when he hears their tapping feet, or faintly feels the sudden heat, with smile he dives, and swiftly turning upside down, he tips them off, and deep they drown, and lose their silly lives to their surprise. Be wise. There are many monsters in the sea, but none so perilous as he, old horny Fastitokalon, whose mighty kindred all are gone, the last of the great turtle fish. So, if to live is what you wish, take this advice. Pay heed to sailors' ancient lore. Set foot on no uncharted shore. Or, better still, your days at peace on the green earth in mirth fulfill. J.R.R. Tolkien. I was pausing for the clock and not ending the poem.
Sorry
but the
about
clock
that.
will ring whether I want it to or not. Anyway, thanks for that question.
It was beautiful, Hal. Well done. I have a question here. It is a $5 question from our good friend Friar Quasar.
Oh, great.
And it is you asked for subgenius questions earlier. Well, here's one for you. What should be done with an obstinate latent subgenius who refuses to buy a membership?
Well, in such a case, one employs the subgenius philosophy as expressed in the subgenius taglines in every occasion in which they may be usefully used, which is practically every occasion, sooner or later. As we know, the textual versions of subgenius lore are extensive and stretch into far space and distant time, starting with the Book of the Subgenius, followed by our New Testament and undescended testicle, the Revelation X or Bob Apocryphon. Then there's, of course, the Cyclopedia of Slack and other things. Be familiar with the answers, and when you quote them, if your friend who obviously has an affinity for them wonders where it comes from or praises the sentiment, then you can always so casually mention their point of origin. And the Christian holiday Christmas is coming up. The geese are getting fat. Please put a penny in the old man's hat and give the Book of the Subgenius and its offshoots as Christmas presents. And then there's a greater opportunity to turn the pages, perhaps initially in idleness, and to be struck by the contents therein, which contain much from me in the way of writing and illustrations, particularly in Revelation X, a book I fear has not been adequately explored by many, even those who profess themselves to be true subgeniuses.
Would you like one more subgenius question?
I would welcome it, of course.
I have.
If not here, where?
Well, I have a $3 question from Reverend Jellyfoot. And it is, in the Book of the Subgenius and other subgenius texts, there is mention of the space bankers Who are they, and what is their relationship to Jehovah One?
Well, according to subgenius lore, you understand, one may appreciate something that is said, appreciate the subgenius value of it, without necessarily being a literal believer in it. The Christian Bible itself is full of such stories. Jesus told them and was asked, "Why do you tell all those stories?" And he said, "It's because through a story you can teach better than through some observed anecdote." At any rate, the bankers, according to this, are the extraterrestrials with whom J.R. Bob Dobbs made a bargain, the X-Day bargain, which is that on X-Day, July 5th, 1998, whenever that really is, the pleasure saucers of the sex goddesses would descend and lift off from troubled and dying planet Earth all the elect, the subgeniuses, in another word. We know there are only a certain number of them, and these are the only ones we are interested in contacting, since there's not room for everyone, and we don't want to be with non-subgeniuses anyway. They can look to their own religions to go to their own afterlives, and much good may it do them. So these interstellar brokers were promised something by J.R. Bob Dobbs. I wonder what. Jehovah One is the senile cosmic space god associated with the old god in the first book of the Bible, known to Islam and Judaism. William Blake called this being Nobodaddy, and it is not unsafe to sass him, because the Jehovah God, the Old Testament God, doesn't really do anything except brood on the cosmos. The creative principle is the second person in the Christian Trinity. He, supposedly, according to such authorities as Jack T. Chick, created the heavens and earth, and set the stars in heaven, and cast the dark foundations deep, and bid the weltering waves their oozy channel keep. So Jehovah is considered not a major player anymore. His time may seem to have run out. According to subgenius theology or fiction, everyone gets old, and God's idea of living outside of time may in itself ultimately, after epicycles and lustrums of cosmic time, be thought to be in question. Clark Ashton Smith wrote of a future when there was a new god of evil and a new god of good. His god of evil he called Thasidon. But rather than get into that, I'll simply say that J.R. Bob Dobbs, when he experienced his divine immaculation from fiddling around with the back of an experimental TV set, heard the words of Jehovah One, which were transliterated in the first book of the Subgenius as the Prescriptures, and these have proved astonishingly accurate for works of prophecy, better than the Christians have done, I would say.
Well, Dr. Hal, we do always have room for more questions. Audience, it's a good time to get the questions in, because
Sure, fill up the hopper with questions. Ask who killed the toads in the rice that killed the Poppycockalorum and the Cockahoopatrice. What songs the sirens sang, as Sir Thomas Browne pointed out, might still be figured out. So we're waiting for your questions, and we know you'll be equal to it.
what Dr. Hal said. And we have our first monster movie moment. So I'm going to...
Oh, yes, our monstrous monster movie. Let's get that one online now.
It is coming along.
For our monster movie moments this Thanksgiving episode of the Ask Dr. Hal show, we will narrate a small section of the motion picture classic, The Call of Cthulhu, made by HPLHS Motion Pictures. The New Orleans police were horrified to note the Cthulhu cultists in the swamp performing their depraved rites, and made an attempt to round them up, to bring in the depraved cultists. Fuchten glui magua naf Cthulhu yech wogach nagul fatag. In an ecstasy of abandonment, the revelers performed their fell rites. And horrible details became apparent. The chief inspector and his men could only look on in horror. Mutilated cadavers were soon apparent. And so the police rushed in. The demented strength of the cultists could not be overestimated. And so it was. In the 1920s, during the Cthulhuid outbreak, and here, aboard a ship leaving the risen, sunken continent of Rolier, where great Cthulhu dreams, the mighty form of Cthulhu itself was seen rising from the oily swell. An unstoppable malignity from beyond the stars. But at full speed ahead, the ship rushed forward, and its prow was to pierce the gelatinous skin, the envelope of the trans-Uranian being. One would think this would do no good, but it was strangely efficacious. The breach caused the dissolution of the creature's form, but soon, as they left the vicinity, they did behold the thing putting itself back together again. It was too much for the pilot's assistant. One cannot look upon the Gorgon's face and live. Ere as we leave Rulia, we see the vapors forming Cthulhu again. And today, he still lies dreaming in his great house at Rulia. Happy Thanksgiving.
There we have
Well, what can be said about that? Oh, what was that?
it. There we have it.
Yes, indeed.
See, we did get you to recite some Lovecraftian.
Well, everyone knows those words.
Sure, we say them every night, before we go to sleep.
Pre-human language, not meant to be spoken by human lips and vocal organs, so it doesn't come out sounding well.
Yeah, we do our best.
Mm-hmm.
with what lips we have. I have a $9 question here
Ah,
from actually let me go back because I'm in the question, and it is this is a Ko-fi supporter, and it
oh,
is a
good.
$9 question. No name on this, I'm afraid.
No name, eh?
And but let me expand it out. How do I stop hating winter? Hating fall because it means winter is coming, and hating spring because it's taking too long to get to summer. Or should I just move to the desert?
Well, as the poet says, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? But depending on where you live, it might be in the habit of lagging behind. And today, there's not much we can say for sure about the weather, except that we're all agreed that it's going to get worse and worse. Winter is not good because the cold is difficult to exercise from one's bones. It's interesting when you get into a hot tub, and even when you feel the all-encompassing heat, there's still a little wriggling part of the cold, which one feels before it gives up. So one could live in the desert. One could live in warmer regions, the equatorial regions, which they say will, within our own lifetime, uh, possibly become uninhabitable. You simply have to find a band which is your comfort zone. But the seasons, in their change, are also inspiring to the human spirit. And this inspiration is hardwired in us from our long evolutionary history and our shorter social history. We enjoy contrasts when they occur. Here in California, of course, snow is quite a rarity, hardly ever happens, and when it does, barely happens. It is difficult to note the progress of the seasons. But isn't the panoply of color of the autumn an important part of life and appreciating the natural world? We cannot dictate to have things exactly as we like them unless we are living in some extraplanetary habitation where all climate and atmospheric conditions are automatically, robotically controlled. People who live on Earth's moon may find themselves longing for a breath of wind or for a little bit of chill or warm air. You don't know what it's got till it's gone. And some of us believe that we should appreciate all the weather that occurs, whether rain or snow. Sleet is a hard one, but one should attempt to read the mood of one's environment, even as it reads, encourages, and inculcates our own mood as those who live within it.
I'm having problems with my buttons this morning. I cleaned my iPad and can't do anything with it.
Well, what's your take on the weather situation? Would you prefer to give up winter or give up inclement weather?
It's interesting that you asked that because I was relating very much to that question. I am one of those people that is seasonally disaffected, and if you were in our work area here, you would find that we use all full spectrum lights in here, which helps tremendously.
Well, my own dear friend Mina Bellavia spends her summers up in New York State, but her winters down in New Orleans, since she can't abide the snow and the cold. And seasonal migration is something which our other friends in the natural world often undergo.
Snowbirds, I believe they call them down south.
Yes, there's snowbirds like snowbirds.
Yes, you just reminded me, we do have some birthdays this month, and I'd like to say happy birthday to a few people. First and foremost, you're one of them. Happy birthday, Dr. Hal. You're later on this month, November 28th.
That's on the 28th.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
So happy birthday to Dr. Hal. And we also have Reverend Eggplant. Happy birthday. Sister Decadence, one of our early guests on this show. Happy birthday. Reverend Trixie von Mothersbaugh. Happy birthday.
Oh, great.
Mr. Lobo is having a birthday this month. So happy birthday, Mr. Lobo. Reverend Chip, our good friend Reverend Chip, a DJ Shaver, and another very good friend of the show, Mia Bella Via. Mia Bella
Yes.
Via. Thought I was going to mess up that last part for a second, but there we go. Mia Bella Via.
Now, she's en route to New Orleans right now. It should be there tomorrow.
Very good. Very good. On her way down. How is the weather down in New Orleans at this juncture?
Well, the weather in New Orleans is generally good, but of course, if you're not used to it, especially the bugginess of it, it might take getting used to. At the moment, I believe she is in Alabama, but en route.
Drive fast. Anyway.
Yeah, she's on the weird back roads of Alabama, actually, an experimental route for her this year.
Very good. Back roads are lovely things.
I think so.
Yeah.
The freeways are fast, but you do lose some of the rural character as you whiz through the various lands that the highway system, which was built in my lifetime, avoid.
Yeah, we're very much lovers of back roads, St. Joyce and I. But I have a question here for you. It's a $3 question from Friar Quasar, and it's a question I think we all want to know the answer to. Mares eat oats, and does eat oats, and little lambs eat ivy. A kid will eat ivy too, wouldn't you?
Well, wouldn't I? Under what circumstances? Starving people often eat grass and sticks and shoe leather and other things. Ivy might be good. One simply must try it. And who were the adventurous progenitors of us today who ate the first lobster or other things which look very inedible? In fact, according to the kosher meme that the Judaic tribe practices, lobster is a forbidden food. It just looks too awful, I assume. But there are certain ivies that one should definitely not eat. Some cause irremovable hallucinations. Others cause poisoning and death. Poison ivy and poison oak, for example. Poison ivy is an actual vine. You know, as kids, playing around in the woods, which kids used to be able to do, there were some things that my childhood friends and I practiced, and one of them was smoking cigarettes, which you cut from a vine. The vine chunk you can smoke like a cigar. It burns like a cigar. You can breathe in the smoke and you can blow it out. Great fun, except it was whispered among these self-same brats, my friends and contemporaries, that there were unfortunate incidences where an unrecognized poison ivy vine had been used for this purpose, causing the hideous death from bubbling, suppurated lungs from those who attempted to produce white smoke and the satisfaction of a cigar from this particular source. There are many other things besides ivy to eat, and let us remember that a kid, in the sense used by the refrain, is not a human child, but the child of a goat, also famous in its own legend for eating tin cans and other things inedible to humans. Now, if the words sound queer and funny to your ear and a little bit jumpy and jivey, remember mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy, as the poet says. What do you got?
I have a $15 question from our good friend Freighter Yang Chawanosaurus.
Oh, good.
And it is, what makes autumn the more poetic of seasons? What is it of this season that sparks your creative impulses? Part two of the earlier question, kinda.
Yes, I would say the transitional nature of autumn, giving way, one thing in the orderly progression of the seasons, which we should welcome with joy and festivals and wine drinking and so on, and which we would and could, were we not insulated by the structures set up by capitalism to feel none of it. So I enjoy autumn, and I've always enjoyed the October period most of all, with the pleasant promise of Halloween, Thanksgiving, and my own birthday. And yet, I have to say that all of the things which I've celebrated the most in my life seem to occur earlier in the summer and not earlier than that in the spring. Still, the more one lives, the more opportunity one has to decorate the calendar with significant events. Because this question attaches to a different question, and both are on the transition between autumn and the following season, I will say a poem here, since those two together go over the $20 mark. This is by John Keats, and if I can remember it all, it's called Hymn to Autumn. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shell with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days can never cease, for summer hath o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hast not seen thee oft amidst thy store? Sometime whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed by the fume of poppies, whilst thy hook spares the next swathe and all its twined flowers. And sometime, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look, dropping the last oozings, hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Ask not for them, thou hast thy music too, where barred clouds bloom the soft dying day and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows, borne aloft or sinking as the soft wind lives or dies, and full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing. Now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from the garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies.
Beautiful.
Yeah, sorry about the cottage cheese thing. Oh well, can't win them all. You know, Keats only lived to age 25. He was a remarkable poet, but he lived and died young. Anyway, what is next?
Well, what is next is our musical guest this month, and it is none other than John Shirley, who has just come out with a new CD that we have right here.
Yes, he is in the Blue Oyster Cult, as well as being a writer of fantastic fiction. And now we are pleased to have him contribute to the show.
Well, and this is a spoken word album, and it is based on the writings that is in this book, The Voice of the Burning House. poems
A
by
book
John
which
Shirley.
I have and which all should purchase.
So there is a pitch for John Shirley. Yes, both wonderful
Mhm.
pieces. We have a sample of that tonight with a accompanying video that the show put together for on behalf of John Shirley, and so we'd like to present that now, while the queue has a chance to breathe a bit. So. Audience, please get the questions in. We will get them all answered tonight before the show is over.
My Five Eyes. Most people see the world with two eyes. Me, I see the world with five. Gazing through a different window, an optical swan dive. At the top of a hidden stairway, from a hidden window way up high, I see the world with all five eyes. I see it with five eyes. You see old Jim is a crabby man. I, the third, sees him at war. A very young Jim, fighting up a hill, wonders, can he take any more? I, number one, I, number two, eyes number 3 and 4. 4 lidless eyes set in a circle, and in the midst, one more. You see the Shine, the new strip mall, with an all-night convenience store. Eye number 4 sees a burned-out shell when the mall's not there anymore. You see a child laughing and tugging on a Christmas toy. I look with eye number 5. I see a dear dead boy. Eye number 1, eye number 2, eyes number 3 and 4. 4 lidless eyes set in a circle, and in the midst, one more.
Pretty good. And that sound is on the album.
Yeah, that's them.
Talking
That's them.
Necronomicon, oculus aspicit nos tenebrarius in tenebris. A dark eye looks at us darkly in darkness. The late Kurt Vonnegut once said to a poet of his acquaintance and mine, the poet Stephen Orland, that you poets have got it easy because your pieces are short and you can work on them. They're nothing like the work of putting a book or even a short story together. And I'm sure our friend John Shirley, who is also a member of the Church of the Subgenius, would agree with that. And yet there is a wonderful kick up your heels feeling of freedom by creating a poem, particularly an intense short work. And we are very grateful to have that one and hope perhaps to have another in the fullness of time from Mr. Shirley and his confreres.
Great stuff. Let's see. I have a $10 question from our very good friend, Dr. Penny. And it is, when life seems to yield a failure in one thing or another, what ought I do in the balance between Pollyannaism and consignment?
Well, Dr. Penny, I am in great sympathy with you there, but this is a predicament which all mortals have. Every creature that lives, and of course, every thinking creature that considers life, has been subjected to this. It could be that one simply exhausts a certain strain of luck. Nothing is immortal and everything comes to an end. So the obvious answer is, try another vein of luck. Try something else. While there is life, there is hope. And understand the sweetness of things is caused by their insubstantiality and the possibility that they may always be yanked away. One cannot stick out one's lower lip and grump about it, because this is the ineluctable, unstoppable law of the universe which we inhabit. Only unhallowed arts and evil sciences attempt to retard or change this progress.
I have a $10 question from a very good friend of the show, Reverend Jay Cobblestone. We're glad to see you in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on the new pterosaur species identified in sub-Saharan Africa?
This is the giant pterosaur recently discovered. These things are getting bigger and bigger as they are discovered, or rather bigger and bigger ones are discovered. Some of the remains being unearthed were so large they were not recognized as pterosaurs, which most people inaccurately call pterodactyls. Pterodactyls are a certain subspecies or variety of flying reptile. These largest ones now are the size or larger than the size of small aircraft, and most remarkable they are in appearance. Here in California, the California Academy of Sciences had some displays of these huge winged things. You could walk under them and look up and marvel. So this is in the direction that paleontology is going. They find these things the more they look, and only at this time in human history is it possible for us to look so far back in the past and also so far out into the universe, which is another way of saying the same thing, since we are looking at things in the remote past due to the limitations offered by the speed of light. Still, the Earth and solar system travel around the galaxy and have been around several times, despite the incredible size and age of the galaxy, because that is how old things are. And when we look out into the night sky from our place in the Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way galaxy, we can look at the other side when we see the band of the Milky Way crossing the sky. That is where there isn't light pollution from the exigencies of capitalism. And there we are looking at where once dinosaurs roamed the earth. I don't know if this is really the answer to the question that you wanted. What do you think, Pontius? Should I elaborate further?
Dr. Hal, I will leave that up to you. If you would like to go on, we can certainly continue.
Well, let's hope it was a satisfactory answer. I can never tell. When we do a live show, I can tell from the way the audience reacts whether they like it or not and whether I should go on. But here, it's entirely a matter of guesswork.
I have the advantage. I can see the chat that's going on over here, so I can see a lot of the reactions.
Chatterbox.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, have they said anything that is libelous so far?
Not yet. But I'm sure someone out there is probably naked, and it's things going on.
Well, we'll find out about that when we go to the chat room after the show. By the way, we invite everyone to go to the chat room so we can all talk about things after the show. Some people like that the best part of the show, since they get to be on it and not just me.
See, good stuff. I have more questions coming in here. I have a question here. It's a $6 question, and it's from Reverend Dr. Les. How can one decide between a trip to an exotic destination alone or a mundane destination with friends?
Well, depending on what that destination is, with friends, you have the opportunity to multiply your own viewpoint. If you are with them and on the same page, as we say. So in that sense, you'll go farther and the destination becomes more exotic. What you think mundane might not be their opinion, but it is good to keep any negatory opinion that you might have to yourself, because otherwise you could be suppressing these alternate viewpoints, which might be the very thing that makes the trip worthwhile. It is best to travel with others if they are agreeable companions. Some people are delightful to travel with. Others, and we very quickly know who they are, not so delightful. At any rate, here on the show, we wish you joy of your travels.
Travel's good.
Broadens one, they say.
I want to get much broader before I'm broadless.
Yes, that's a good plan.
But I have a $5 question from our friend Friar Quasar.
Good.
Is it possible that the Exist can't find us because we have all been placating the wrong star fist of removal and should have been biting our thumb at Jehovah -1 as it is written? Would you like me to repeat that?
No, I believe I have that. It touches on what we had earlier. You see,
and it's zists, isn't it? It's not exists. I get that from reading, not from conversations.
Well, it is what, isn't it?
It exists, not exist. I said exist.
Oh, exists. Yes. All right. Well, we also say merry existlessness since they haven't manifested yet, as far as we know. Maybe we won't have to say that this year.
So is it zist or exist?
It's exist, of course. Exist, exist, one who comes from X, one who comes from unknown. X, the unknown. The planet is called Planet X, although if there is a Planet X in our own vicinity, clearly we don't know which one it is because it is unknown. Nonetheless, recent advances in our knowledge have brought us into the remoter areas of the solar system, where we have discovered new planets, like, for example, the planet Biden, named after the current president, Joe Biden. And further beyond in the Oort cloud, beyond the heliopause, which is the extent of the sun's cosmic reach, there are mystery objects which are still part of our solar system, hurtling in long paths, centuries in lengths, around the sun. These are called the Centaur orbits. And actually, I made a diagram illustrating them, which is found in the book The Night Sky by Richard Grossinger, which came out a few years ago. So can the exists not find us? Well, whatever, their GPS is probably pretty good. And we are in a very predictable trajectory, in a predictable place, constantly falling toward the sun, which is constantly falling toward the center of the galaxy, but orbiting, which is the nature of such things, because of its velocity, which, if unchecked, should keep us in a nice, long, permanent orbit until the worst happens. You know, there's no guarantee that we will not transit into a region of space where something else may be, or where adverse conditions may prevail. Ye know not when the master cometh. And despite all the crazies that you hear saying they know when the world will end, it is written even in Christian theology that no one will know, and that it will be a surprise. Perhaps for most, not a nice surprise, but we subgeniuses teach that it will be a good one, and no one can take this away from us, because when it happens, we will all be in the same boat.
I have a $3 question from Dr. or Kill Me. Why was there never a Reverend Yoctisma, Reverend Z. Rev. Thorn, or a Bob Apocrypha? I love the books and your writing. I always wondered why there weren't more books by Stang, Philo Drummond, Hal, Puzzo, G. Gordon Gordon, Buck Naked, and M. Pepe, etc. Praise Wotan.
Well, thank you for that vote of confidence, to which, in answer, I say, if you buy and locate all the books of the subgenius, some of which are out of print, you will find submissions by most, if not all, of those authors. For example, in the Three-Fisted Tales of Bob, you find not only my short story written in the Lovecraftian vein called The Smoker from the Shadows, but an interview with God conducted by one Michael J. Pepe, a wonderful piece of writing. The Apocrypha of the Church of the Subgenius is supposed to be encapsulated in the recent volume, the Bob Apocryphon, or rather, the Bibliographon. This is a sort of digest-sized book, not the coffee table-sized book of the Subgenius or Revelation X. And the book of the Subgenius has had many children, had many progeny. The old Stark Fist of Removal used to have extensions of the sacred scribes' writings. But there is a plan to produce a certain number of books throughout the years. This plan has been followed so far. So hold on, and I would recommend you subscribe to the Dobbstown Mirror newspaper, which proceedeth from one of the great subgenius auctors, the Reverend Onan Canobite. So, there are such apocryphal submissions. It is difficult to categorize them and list them for a very simple reason. Subgenius doctrine stipulates that any old damn thing a subgenius says is accurate and automatically becomes part of overall subgenius doctrine. If it appears to be contradictory, we say, just as the Christians do, those who find contradictions in the Bible just do not understand it. Here, we give up the sacrament of understanding in order to be more deeply bathed in the enshrouding sacrament of faith, our faith, the faith in Bob, and beyond that, in Slack.
Well,
Slack.
we have
Oh.
our second monster movie moment, Dr. Hal.
Oh, yes. And a monstrous movie moment it is, eh?
Indeed it is, and it is a bit of a departure because usually we show movies, and this time it is a wonderful old television show that is just bursts with delightful things.
Well, it was shot on film in those days, and it was made by E.G. Saburia, a genius who created Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, the entire pantheon of Japanese monsters, and who produced the show this comes from, Ultra Q, as well as its better-known successor, Ultraman. So why don't we check this out? I believe it is called Spider Mansion.
Spider Mansion.
Yes, Spider Mansion.
So here it is, Dr. Hal.
Oh, there you are. Yes, it's time for our next monster movie moment. You know, something is hardwired in the human genome that makes us somewhat uneasy around the humble spider. Actually, the spider is our friend, but when they become giant, they gleefully join the monster pantheon. And so we leave Spider Mansion, still filled with its eight-legged inhabitants. But let us remember that spiders are actually more our friends than our enemies. They are, in fact, instrumental in keeping us all alive on this planet of ours. And that's our concluding word. You know, it's interesting that the jumping spider, one of the most intelligent spiders, does cast silk on its victims in just that way, using not just the spinnerets from the abdomen, but the pedipalps of the cephalothorax, the equivalent of the hands that a human has. And they cast these loopy nets on their victims who are paralyzed with fear, one must assume. Recent scientific work has shown that that particular type of spider from the Salticidae dreams when it sleeps, and one wonders what those dreams might consist of. But their brains definitely go into the dream state.
They're fascinating creatures. They're interesting to get to know.
They are, and they play too. The jumping spiders have a playful nature. They used to play with me when I was a child, but I'm not going to get into that this time.
Well, I have some questions for us. I have one from
Excellent.
our good friend, Johnny is wrong, and it is a $19.99 question.
Very good.
A nice round number. Do your best primordial scream, even if that translates to something you are more comfortable with. So your most comfortable primordial scream.
But then I'm not accustomed to screaming in a primordial fashion. But he's telling me to do something that is not really a question, or is it? Often questions begin with the word "do." Can you repeat it? I just want to be sure.
Do your best primordial scream, even if that translates to something you are more comfortable with. It does start with a do, but I don't.
Yes,
No
but
question mark.
if one is comfortable, one does not give a primordial scream. Oh, I've given these screams at the past. I've screamed in fright at certain events, but at the moment where I sit now, I'm surrounded by other people who might disturb these proceedings by coming to investigate if I really let one of those out. And yet, what can I do with a 1999 question? This indeed is a conundrum, a paradox. I'm asked to do something which might destabilize and end the show itself. What would you recommend, Pontius? I don't. If I scream, it will cause problems here, and we want to keep the show going. Of course, there is the silent scream. Sometimes one is so frightened that one opens one's mouth to scream, but no scream can be emitted. One is frozen in horror. At other times, I have screamed in a shrill and effeminate manner. Once it was when I woke up to see an enormous spider dashing toward my face across the bed. When I was living in Arizona, you could have heard me scream for blocks at that time. When I hurled myself out of the bed and dislodged the bedclothes, later I looked very carefully but could find no traces of this giant except for some mysterious webbing under the bed, but there was no spider to be overcome. Another time I was shaving in the bathroom of the same house, and I felt something tickling across my instep. And when I looked down, I saw a maximally sized black widow spider strolling over. Well, sir, you should have heard my pipes then. I could be heard in the remotest side of the house. But as I also said, there are times when it's just so horrible that screaming seems irrelevant. And this was one time when I walked into my friend's house, and a large black widow spider had built a web right across the door, which I walked through, and then I felt it climbing up my face, but I couldn't do anything until my friend turned the light on. And then once the light was on, he saw the problem and I saw it. We got the spider off, and he squirted it with insect poison. A terrible thing to do, but it was a deadly venomous spider. Because it was killed in this fashion, it was not a mashed spider when we were able to examine the carcass, and every detail of its anatomy was clear. I'm awfully sorry that the logistics of this presentation prevent me from yelling or screaming. I'll only say that if you come to a subgenius event at some time in that rowdy venue, I will be happy to scream, even as Ann Darrow screamed when she saw King Kong, which is to say, loudly and continuously. Please accept my forgiveness for not screaming now, but as I said, it would bring investigators here whose presence would be more than distracting. Phooey, I feel I cheated somebody, but I can't do it. It would wreck the show. I have a good loud scream when I scream.
You asked me
primordial or otherwise. What was that?
You asked me if I thought you should or what I thought you should do, and I was going to say, no, please, Dr. Hal, don't scream.
It would be hard on our equipment, our microphones also. The noise I can produce. You don't want to scream when you're being recorded. The recording cannot accommodate it. It goes into static. If you're too close to the microphone, that can happen. This is a studio produced show, and I am very sorry. Let me provide this poem called The Mulips. The shadows where the mulips dwell are dark and wet as ink, and slow and softly rings their bell, as in the slime you sink. You sink into the slime who dare to knock upon their door, while down the grinning gargoyles stare, and noisome waters pour. Beside the rotting river strand, the drooping willows weep, where gloomily the gore crows stand, croaking in their sleep. Over the Murloc Mountains, by a long and weary way, in a narrow valley where the trees are gray, by a dark pool's border, without wind or tide, moonless and sunless, the mulips hide. The cellars where the mulips sit are dark and dank and cold, by single flickering candle lit, and there they count their gold. Their walls are wet, the ceilings drip, their feet upon the floor go softly with a squish flap flip as they sidle to the door. They peep out slyly. Through a crack their feeling fingers creep, and when they've finished, in a sack your bones they take to keep. Over the Murloc Mountains, by a long and lonely road, through the spider shadows and the marsh of toad, and through the wood of hanging trees and the gallows weed, you go to find the mulips, and the mulips feed. J.R.R. Tolkien.
Cool.
Did we ever do that one before?
It doesn't sound familiar, Hal.
Well, it's always the first time.
Nicely done.
Let us go on.
Well, I have one here from Friar Quasar, but elements of it sound familiar. I'm not sure if I read it to you. So I'm going to read it and tell me if you've heard it already. Is it possible that the Exist can't find us because we have all been placating the wrong stark fist of removal and should have been biting our thumb at Jehovah -1 as it is written? Did I read that question?
Yes, you did read it. And I said that, biting our thumb at Jehovah is not, I should have said, is not restricted only to sub-geniuses, that we all do it as we slide into an irreligious and apostate age, having had too much of churchiness, church-going, and particularly the so-called evangelicals, who no longer, despite their name, provide good news to the polity.
Yeah, like I said, the question sounded familiar, but that last part about the thumb part didn't
thumb
sound
biting.
familiar.
Well,
Yeah.
of course, that was an obscene gesture in the Middle Ages. Another one was this, called the fig, intended to represent, I think, the female genitals. I can't seem to hold my hand in there. The fig was brandished at God himself by one of the unrepentant sinners in hell, observed by Dante and Virgil. But these days we see the extended middle finger and the extended tongue. The slimy organ is extruded by everybody on Instagram and Pinterest and so forth. Even the prettiest women disfigure their pictures by waggling their tongues and sticking out their fingers in this fashion. What a pity that is. Let's hope that this goes out of fashion as soon as possible.
Well, then, I do have another Friar Quasar question, and this one I know we didn't read.
Quasar by Motorola.
It is a quasarization.
Mm-hmm.
It is a $3 question, and it is, who would win in a fight? Fastatokalon or Old Sequoia?
Well, I don't believe that fight could ever occur because old Sequoia, a giant turtle found in the Wisteria Pond, Sequoia in Algonquin meaning turtle, I believe, that is a freshwater species, but Phascotocolon is a saltwater species. Also, old Sequoia has the weight advantage because of his massive shell and super powerful jaws, but then Phascotocolon is more like a freshwater turtle. And anyone who's ever picked up a freshwater turtle knows that those things are mean. They'll bite the bejesus out of you. They'll whip around and bite you. They really don't like being handled. And the largest prehistoric turtle known to science was called the Archelon. And that name is most interesting because arch is like arch, as in the archbishop, the head prelate, or the archfiend, Satan, the head of the devils, plus Chilon or Chilonian, meaning turtle. And this giant super turtle is a famous specimen in natural history museums, but interestingly enough, it is missing a hind flipper since something even larger apparently bit it off. Was it that old Sequoia, I wonder? You know, the pond at Wisteria has recently been full of what appear to be large-sized, even giant snapping turtles. But are they their largest size, or are they the spawn of old Sequoia, who would in that case be female? These creatures can give birth to others without the intercession of a male. But perhaps there was a male which is smaller than the female, as often occurs in the animal kingdom. In any event, these large snappers are probably all female, which occurs in such a parthenogenetic birth. At the real X Day, so-called, which both you and I attended, we were unable to have the baptism in the pond there because one could look into it and see it seething with large snapping turtles. Not only that, there were signs around the edge saying the public health authorities think it would be a good idea if nobody went into this pond. So we had the baptism with a glass of water on the bank, and no one took off their clothes. Friend, I'm seeing that the picture is frozen. How are we doing? Can others?
Yeah, Hal, your picture is frozen on your side. I did just shake the queue, and we are down
I'm
to
not
our
sure.
last question. Oh, you're kind of bouncing in and out. It says the internet connection is unstable.
Well, that's a hell
Oh,
of a
you're
note.
back. You're back.
Did my answer get heard?
You were loud and clear. Yes, right up until
All right.
that.
Well,
even
there is
even when
that.
you froze, your sound was still coming across.
All right. Let it always be so.
It is the nature of this beast. Something
That's
will rear
right.
its ugly head.
As one who does a weekly podcast, I'm well aware of the fact that the computer giveth and the computer taketh away.
I've tried to make friends with the gremlins, but they're not very trusting.
They're going to do what they're going to do.
Oh my
Satan
God.
and his imps. And those imps ain't wimps.
No. And we've certainly dealt with our fair share of them. But
Yes.
I did just shake the queue, and there seems to be nothing. Were you finished with answering that question, Hal?
I think I was. I was distracted by seeing everything freeze, but
Me too.
But who would win? I didn't give an answer to who would win. I'd say Phascotocolon, because old Sequoia, though huge, is limited by the size of the inland body of water which she is in. Or is she? Are there subterranean tunnels, which the legend states, which would enable her to travel to another venue, perhaps even another subgenius venue? Southern Ohio is supposedly the home of other cryptid species, such as the Loveland frogmen. You might escape old Sequaw only to become a captive of the frogmen. I would not wish to be such a captive. But it's all possible to look up on the internet. In fact, all sorts of nonsense, foofara and taradiddle is there, and I have been following with interest reports of giant spiders in Louisiana. These seem to be consistently coming out, and so one can find and read these accounts. People are attesting to it passionately, just as one used to read flying saucer accounts. Actually, those have not ceased either. So what appears to be next for us, Pastor Pressure?
Well, Dr. Hal, let me shake that cue one more time. And
give it a shake, 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 and turn yourself about.
Let me do it one more time. And nothing falls out. That was the last question of the evening.
The last question.
The last question. So that was it. Wow. Had some good questions tonight. That was a good show.
Well, when we did the live show and the last question was announced, it would always turn out that wily Chicken John had secreted a few of them away so that there were final questions or even a speed round. Anyway, we'll see what is possible in the future.
Should keep that in mind. But yeah, I'm not tricky like Chicken John.
Yeah, that's right. We don't necessarily do things the same way.
Just not tricky like that. But anyway, we have a poem, I do believe, coming up from you, and if you are ready, we will have you do that right after this small announcement, and we'll be moving smartly forward. So
very good.
But while I have everyone here, I'd like to say good night and thank you for coming tonight. It was a great show. Good questions. Thank you, audience. And see you
in the chat room, perhaps.
Yes, I did send the link out in the chat. So if
I intend to use it,
and I sent it out in the other chat too, so everybody got a link.
All right. And
so
a hot link it will be.
And we will take this opportunity to say thank you and good night, everyone, and we will see you again on December the 11th.
That's right, coming up quickly.
You have no idea. It's so fast. Anyway, we'll see you in a bit. Just a quick reminder that the Ask Dr. Hal show may be seen live on Twitch on the second Sunday of each month, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, at twitch.tv/AskDrHal. Please visit the Ask Dr. Hal website at gonzotronics.net/ADH, where you will find links for previous episodes of the show, as well as information on live performances. That address again is gonzotronics.net/ADH for Ask Dr. Hal.
Il Penseroso by John Milton. Hence, vain, deluding joys, the brood of folly without father bred, how little you bestead or fill the fixed mind with all your toys. Dwell in some idle brain, where fancies fond with gaudy shapes possess, as thick and numberless as the gay motes that people the sunbeams, or likest hovering dreams, the fickle pensioners of Morpheus's train. But hail, thou goddess, sage and holy, hail, divinest melancholy, whose saintly features are too bright to hit the human sense of sight, and therefore to our weaker view o'erlaid with black, staid wisdom's hue. Black, yet such as in esteem Prince Memnon's sister might beseem, or that starred Ethiop queen that strove to set her beauty's praise above the sea nymphs and their powers offended. Yet thou art higher far descended, thee, bright-haired Vesta, long of yore to solitary Saturn bore, his daughter she. In Saturn's reign, such mixture was not held a stain. Oft in glimmering bowers and glades he met her, and in secret shades of woody Ida's inmost grove, while yet there was no fear of Jove. Come, pensive nun, devout and pure, sober, steadfast, and demure, all in a robe of darkest grain, flowing with majestic train and sable stole of cypress lawn over thy decent shoulders drawn. Come, but keep thy wonted state with steady step and musing gait, with looks commencing with the skies, thy rapt soul sitting in thine eyes. There held in holy passions still, forget thyself to marble, till with a sad leaden downward cast thou fixest on the earth as fast, and join with these calm, peace, and quiet, spare fast, that oft with gods doth diet, and hears the muses in a ring, aye, round about Jove's altar sing. And add to these retired leisure, that in trim gardens takes his pleasure, but first and chiefest with thee bring him that yon soars on golden wing, guiding the fiery wheeled throne, the cherub contemplation, and the mute silence hissed along, lest Philomel will deign a song out of her sweetest, saddest plight, soothing the rugged brow of night, while Cynthia checks her dragon yoke gently o'er the accustomed oak. Sweet bird that shunts the noise of folly, most beautiful, most melancholy. Thee, chauntress, oft the woods among I woo to hear thy even song, and missing thee I walk unseen on the dry, smooth shaven green, to behold the wandering moon, riding near her highest noon, like one that hath been led astray through the heavens' wide pathless way, and oft as if her head she bowed, stooping through a fleecy cloud. Oft on a plat of rising ground I hear the far-off curfews sound over some wide, well-watered shore, swinging low with sullen roar. Or, if the air will not permit, some still removed place will fit, where glowing embers through the room teach light to counterfeit a gloom, far from all resort of mirth, save for the cricket on the hearth, or the bellman's drowsy charm to bless the doors from nightly harm. But let my lamp at midnight hour be seen in some high lonely tower, where I might oft outwatch the bear with thrice great Hermes, or unsphere the spirit of Plato to unfold what worlds or what vast regions hold the immortal mind that hath forsook her mansion in this fleshy nook. And of those demons that are found in fire or air or underground, whose power hath a true consent with planet or with element. Sometime let gorgeous tragedy in sceptred pall come sweeping by, presenting Thebes or Pelops' line, or the tale of Troy divine, or what, though rare of later age, ennobled hath the buskined stage. But oh, sad virgin, that thy power might raise Musaeus from his bower, or bid the soul of Orpheus sing such notes as warbled to the string, drew iron tears down Pluto's cheek, and made hell grant what love did seek. Or call up him that left half told the story of Cambuscan old, of Cambal and of Alger Seife, and who had Canacé to wife, that owned the virtuous ring and glass, or of the wondrous horse of brass on which the Tartar king did ride. Or if all else, great bards beside in great and noble tunes have sung of tourneys and of trophies hung, of forests and enchantments drear, where more is meant than meets the ear. Thus, night, oft see me in thy pale career, till civil-suited morn appear, not tricked or frounced as she was wont with the Attic boy to hunt, but kerchiefed in a comely cloud, while rocking winds are piping loud, or ushered with a shower still, when the gust hath blown his fill, ending on the rustling leaves with minute drops from off the eaves. And when the sun begins to fling his flaring beams, me, goddess, bring to arched walks of twilit groves, and shadows brown that sylvan loves of pine or monumental oak, where the rude axe with even stroke was never heard the nymphs to daunt, or fright them from their hallowed haunt. There in close covert by some brook, where no profaner eye may look, hide me from day's garish eye, while the bee with honeyed thigh that at her flowery work doth sing, and the waters murmuring with such consort as they keep, entice the dewy feathered sleep. And may some strange, mysterious dream wave at his wings in airy stream of lively portraiture displayed, softly on mine eyelids laid. And as I wake, sweet music breathe above, about, or underneath, sent by some spirit to mortals good, or the unseen genius of the wood. But let my dew feet never fail to walk the studious cloisters pale, and love the high embowed roof with antique pillars, massy proof, and storied windows richly dight, casting a dim religious light. There let the pealing organ blow to the full-voiced choir below, in service high and anthem clear, as may with sweetness through mine ear dissolve me into ecstasies, and bring all heaven before mine eyes. And lastly, may my weary age find out the peaceful hermitage, the hairy gown and mossy cell, where I may sit and rightly spell of every star that heaven doth know, and every herb that sips the dew, till old age do at last attain to something like prophetic strain. These pleasures, melancholy, give, and I with thee will choose to live.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Please join us for our after-show video chat. For links to this and more, visit gonzotronics.net/ADH for Ask Dr. Hal.